Welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, I'll be walking you through the time value of money. The time value of money is a concept that holds that a specific amount of money today will not be the same with what it will be tomorrow because of various factors. There are so many factors that affect the time value of money, which means 1 naira today or $1 today will not be $1 tomorrow. What are those factors that contribute to eroding the value of money or improving the value of money? In some economy, the value of money over time has been eroded, while in some economy, the value keep fluctuating. It will go up today, go down tomorrow. So what are those basic factors that affect the value of money in an economy? There are so many factors, but in this particular lecture, I'll be showing you two of the factors that are responsible for the fluctuation or the changes in the value of money over a period of time. The very first factor here is interest rates. Interest rate plays a pivotal role in the determination of the value of money, how the value of money or how the value grows over time. Now, for instance, how does the interest rate play this role? In an economy, if interest rate, for instance, is 20%, if a lender should lend out, say, 200,000 to a borrower, within the space of 1 year, this 200,000 will have grown by 20%. But if the borrowing rate is 10%, the value of money or the future cash flow will be growing by 10%. So the value of future cash flow, when compounded, will increase with higher interest rates, and it will also decrease with lower interest rates. So the impact of compounding, higher interest rates increases future value, while lower interest rates tends to reduce future value. Now, before I explain this compounding and discounting, let me first take the inflation. So what is inflation? Inflation simply is the rise in price of goods and services over a period of time. So it's like general rise in price in the value of goods and services. Inflation erodes the purchasing power of money over time. As inflation increases, the value of money decreases because a given amount of money will buy fewer goods and services in the future than it will today. For instance, if I have 2 million last year and if I can purchase a vehicle with 2 million last year, if there is inflation of say 20%, by next year, that same 2 million naira will not be able to buy a vehicle because of what? Inflation. So the cost of vehicle will be 2 million plus the inflation rates in a year's time. So this is how inflation and interest rates tends to affect the value of money over time. I will show you how to do this calculation, and also I will also be showing you how inflation affects the value of money. I will do a little calculation on that, and I will also show you also how to compound the cash flow and how to discount cash flow. And finally, I will show you the reason why the Central Bank of Nigeria or the Fed will always put inflation borrowing rates above inflation rates. Why is it that in Nigeria now for the past few months, the central bank has been increasing interest rates? Currently, the MPR stands at 27.25%. So why is the central bank always increasing these rates? But there are different measures anyway to combat inflation. that is just one of the various measures. So, but for increasing the interest rates for the Nigerian economy, for now, that may not be the best solution because the CBN believes that there is too much of money in the economy. That is why they are increasing the interest rates. But there are many other measures that can be used to combat inflation. The basic thing is to determine the reason, the cause of the inflation. So when you determine the cause of the inflation, you know the right approach and the right tool to use to combat the inflation. So compounding, have been hearing about the word compounding. What does it mean? Compounding is the process of earning interest on both the initial principal and accumulated interest over a period of time. So if you have 2 million naira, you borrow out 2 million naira, and the interest rate is, let's put 10% per annum, which means annually you receive 10%. So depending on how long, maybe a deposit, you've deposited 2 million naira, you are receiving 10% per annum. So it depends on how long will these deposits be with the bank. So at the end of the first year, your money will have grown to 2 million naira plus your interest, which is 2 million naira times 10%. So your money will have grown to 2 million plus 10% of 2 million, that's 200,000. So your money will have grown to 200,000 at the end of the first year. That means your new principal at the beginning of year 2 will now be 2,200,000 naira. So in year 2, the interest you are going to receive will not be interest on 2 million naira again. You are going to receive interest on 2,200,000. So it will be times 1. So it will now be times 10%. So what I'm saying here is that now you are receiving interest on 2,200,000 instead of 2 million. So you are receiving interest on both the initial 2 million and the additional interest of what? 200,000. So compounding is like you are receiving interest on both principal and what? Interest. So let's look at what it means to discount. So when you are compounding, you are growing a cash flow. If this is this year, 2024, and this is 2025. So when you are compounding, you want to know the future value of a particular cash flow today. Okay. So discounting, what is discounting of cash flow? Discounting is the reverse of compounding. It is the process of determining the present value of a future cash flow or series of cash flow. So what you are doing in discounting, you are trying to know the present value of a future cash flow. For instance, if I give you, say, 2025, so I'm going to receive 2,200,000 naira. And interest rate is also 10%, as earlier said. So what will now be the present value? This is future value. I want to determine present value. So I now need to know the present value. The present value is that I want to remove, I'm assuming that this 2.2 million in 2025 is my initial amount plus interest. So the discounting now will now be like, I'm trying to remove the interest of 200,000. So the present value will now be what? 2 million. But I'm going to show you the formula you are going to use to do that. So the present value will be now 2 million. But the future value, if I compound this 2 million with 10%, the future value in 1 year time will be what? 2.2. But if I discount this future value to present value, it will be what? 2 million. So to compound, you are increasing the cash flow, you are growing the cash flow. To discount, you are removing the interest elements to get what? The value of the cash flow today. So what is the key difference, or what are the key differences between these two? The first, compounding grows money forward, while discounting brings money forward. These concepts are crucial for financial management. We are talking about investment appraisal, bond valuation, and every other long-term decision, because you are going to be discounting your cash flows. So there are two kinds of cash flows. We have the real cash flow and we have the nominal cash flow. Real cash flow, what is the real cash flow? As the word implies, real. It means that it has not been adjusted for inflation. I have 2 million naira today, 2024, and your examiner tells you that you are going to receive 2 million naira in 2026. 2 million naira in 2026. If inflation rate is 20%, and your examiner tells you that this 2 million that you are receiving in 2026 is real cash flow, it means that this 2 million has not been adjusted for what? Inflation. So if I adjust it for inflation, it becomes nominal. But let me leave it at the real first. So it means this amount has not been adjusted. I've not added inflation to it. Okay. So nominal cash flow. These are future cash flows after taking account of what? Inflation. So how do I convert this 2 million to a nominal cash flow? I need to take consideration of what? This 20% inflation. So if I want to convert 2 million to, if I want to convert this amount now to nominal cash flow, I need to now, this is the formula. Nominal cash flow equal current price or current cash flow into 1 plus I raised to power n. So what does that mean? The current cash flow, this 2 million now, is in current terms. Today price has not been adjusted for inflation. So what will be the price or this amount in 2026? So I have 2 million, which is the current cash flow. So I want to know the price in 2026. 1 plus the inflation is 20%. That's 0.2. 1 plus 0.2. So how many years? This n now here is number of years. So how many years between 2024 and 2026? So based on investment appraisal, let me assume that this is what? Beginning of 2024. So if this is beginning of 2024, it means I'm going to add 2024 to the series. Or if this is end of 2024, it means I'm not going to add 2024 to the series. But let me assume beginning. So 2024, 1 year, 2025, 2 years, 2026, 3 years. I'm also assuming this is end of 2026. So beginning of 2024, end of 2026, that will take me to 3 years. So raised to power 3. So whatever this gives me, that becomes what? The nominal cash flow. Okay. So finally, on this series, we have two types of discount rates. We have the real discount rates and the nominal discount rates. So these two, they are just the same. They're almost the same thing with what I just explained earlier on. Real discount rates are discount rate that has not been inflated. So you have not added inflation to the discount rates. 20%, I used 20% earlier. If in 2024, discount rate is 20%. Now, if inflation rate is, say, 4% annually, in 2026, this discount rate will no longer be what? 20% because of the 4% inflation. So the discount rate also need to factor in what? This inflation. So I need to factor in this inflation in this particular discount rate. And now, if you are discounting cash flows, You cannot discount a nominal cash flow with a real discount rate. I take that again. You cannot discount nominal cash flow with real discount rates. So you must discount real cash flows with real discount rates and nominal cash flow with what? Nominal discount rates. So the nominal discount rate is the discount rate that inflation has been added to. So when you add inflation to the discount rate, it becomes nominal. Or in your exam, you are writing the financial management exam, your examiner may decide to give you a real discount rate and nominal cash flow, or a nominal discount rate and real cash flows. So if you are given the nominal discount rate and real cash flow, it's easy. So let me assume your nominal discount rate is 20% again, and your examiner gives you real cash flows, 200 in year one, 200 in year two, and 200 in year three. So if the examiner gives you real cash flows, it means that you need to convert this real cash flow to what? Nominal cash flows. And you are told that this amount will be growing by what? 3% annually. So what do I need to do? This already is a nominal cash flow, but this is real cash flow. Anytime they tell you that this cash flow is in current terms or year zero value, you know that what it is what a nominal cash flow. Today's price, anytime you hear the word today's price, current term, that means it is a nominal, it's real cash flow, sorry. Once it's today's price, it is real cash flow. So I need to grow this by 3%. This is year zero. So for year one, what will be the value? It will now be 200 into 1.03 raised to power 1. Year two, 200, 1.03 raised to power 2, just like that till the last year in the series. So when I have grown this cash flow, then I can now, it will now become nominal cash flow. This will become nominal cash flow. I can now use the nominal cost of capital to discount its cash flows. Okay. So, but if your examiner gives you a real cost of capital, 20%, and the examiner gives you nominal cash flows, it means that I need to convert this real cost of capital to what? A nominal cost of capital. And this is the formula that will apply. 1 plus money cash flow is equal to, 1 plus money cost of capital or nominal cost of capital is equal to 1 plus real cost of capital into 1 plus the inflation rate. So this is how to convert the nominal cost of capital to a real cost of capital. So let me walk you through a little example on compounding and discounting. In this particular lecture, I will not be solving the nominal cost of capital and the real cost of capital. I will not solve a question on that. In my subsequent lectures, I'll be doing a video on that. So let's look at the nominal cost of capital, compounding and discounting. This is a simple table here. To compound, this is the formula that you use for compounding. So when you want to grow a particular cash flow, you use the first formula here. Now, what is the difference between the first and second formula? Is this minus. When you are discounting, it will be raised to power minus n. When you are compounding, it will just be raised to power n. Okay. So let's assume interest rate today is 20% rate of borrowing. Let me leave the inflation first. Let me just show you what it means to compound, then we'll now look at when there is inflation, what is the effect of that? Okay. So now, let's assume that you are the lender. Let's assume you are the lender and you have borrowed out 2 million naira. So you expect to receive interest on these 2 million naira, while the borrower expect to pay interest. Before I solve this question on compounding, let me show you. We have the compound interest and we have simple interest. So for simple interest now, 2 million naira, if the rate is 20% per annum, it means that you are going to be paying 20% every year. And most of the time, when simple interest is being used, is if you are going to be paying your interest at the end of every year. So let me do a simple example here. So this 2 million naira and my interest rate is 20%. So what will be the interest rate in year one? Equal 2 million naira times 20%. So it will be equal to 2 million naira times 20%. So my interest rate at the end of year one will be 400,000. So if I'm going to be paying interest annually, so if I pay that 400,000, there's no need compounding. Are you getting it? So if I pay the 400,000, what I'm going to be paying will just be second year. What I'll just be paying will just be every year I'll be paying 2 million, right? So let me lock this cell so that I will drag the formula down. So it means I'll be paying 400,000 every year. At the end of the fourth year, the total interest will be what? 1.6 million. That's simple interest. So compounding means that at the end of the year, you are not paying the interest or you are not receiving the interest for the lender. You won't receive that interest at the end of the year. You will add the interest to the principal. So at the end of every year, you'll be adding the interest to the principal till the end of the loan tenure. At the end of the loan tenure, you now receive the total cash flow, accumulated interest from year one to year four, and your principal. And for the person paying, the person will pay accumulated interest year one to year four and what's the principal. So in this simple interest scenario, now what's happening that the investor is receiving 400,000 every year to keep the principal constant at what? 2 million. So at the end of everything, the person will have received 1.6 million, and the principal that will be repaid will be what? 2 million. Okay, but now let's look at compounding. How does it work? So the first year, this is what you have received, 2 million naira. So at the end of year one, 2.4 million, you are not receiving the interest. So at the beginning of year two, your opening balance becomes what? 2.4 million, which is what? The interest in year one plus your principal in year one. That gives you 2.4. So the interest you are going to receive in year two will now be what? 480. In year one, you received what? 400. So where did the 80 come from? The 80 is you are receiving interest on interests. Remember the 400,000 naira interest, you didn't receive it. So interest on interest, what will be the interest on 400,000 naira that you did not receive? 80,000. So your year one has increased to 80,000. So what will be the opening value in year two? The closing value for year one. So in year four, what will be the opening value? The closing value in year four. Closing value in year three. So now if you can see, the interest that the investor will have received if it is being compounded annually will be 2,147,000 against 1.6 million if it is what? simple interest, a difference of this minus 1.6, that's extra 547. That is the interest that the investor will have received on interest accumulated. In year one, we said it will be 80,000. In year two, year three. So the accumulated interest on interest at the end of 4 years will be what? 547,200 naira. But all of these that we have done can just be solved using a single formula. Since the cash flows are regular, so this is the formula here. Compounding 1 plus R into minus N. So let's use this formula now. Equal, this is my discounting factor. 1 plus R is the percentage, 20%. Let me put this in brackets. So 1 plus R in brackets, raised to the power of how many years? 4. So we are looking at year 1 to year 4. So this will be my discount factor, which is the adjustment factor. So now what will now be the total value if I invest 2 million? So if I'm investing 2 million, at the end of year 4, what will be the value? Equal this amount times 2 million. So that gives me 4,147,200, which is the same figure here. Okay, so it has given me the value as at the end of year 4. So if I want to know the value as at the end of year 2, I'll put it raised to power 2. 2880, which is what is here. 2880. So if I want to know the value as at the end of year 3, it will be 1 plus R, which is my 20%, raised to power what? 3. So that gives me the value as at the end of year 3, which is 23456. This amount here, 3456. So this is just the compounding, very simple and straightforward. Now let's go over to discounting. We said compounding, from the definition I gave you earlier, is that you are looking for the future value of a particular cash flow. So this is cash flow here. This is the cash flow that we are looking for the future value. So I'm looking for the future value of this cash flow, 2 million, using 20% in interest rate. So the future value will be what? 4,147,200 naira. So discounting now, if peradventure I'm giving this amount, 4,147, let me bring it here. So I'm giving this amount today, and I'm asked to determine the present value of this amount. So the examiner gives you this amount, say at the end of year 4, you as an investor, at the end of year 4, you'll have received 4,147,200. Now, what is the value of this money today? Okay. So this is the interest element, just as it was in the first example. Drag it down. Total interest will still amount to 2,147. So the discounting now is like you are removing the interest rate annually. This is what it was at the beginning. This is what it will be in 4 years' time. This is the interest rate. So if I remove the interest rate for year 4, I will get what it will be in year 3. If I remove year 3 interest rates, I will get what it will be in year 2, and just like that. Okay, but we can still discount the same cash flow by using the same formula that we have here. So discounting is equal to 1 plus the discount rate of 20% raised to power. This is now the difference, raised to power minus 4. So this is my discount factor. So if you look at the compounding is always 1 plus. This is 1.73. It's always above 1. While for your discounting, is always below 1. So it's only year 0, that's the current day. Both the discounting will be 1 and the compounding will be 1. If it is in year 0, it will be 1. For anything after year 0 for discounting, the discount factor will be always less than 1, while the compound factor will be always more than 1. So now, what is the cash flow that we want to discount? This is the future value of the cash flow that I'm discounting. So now what will now be the present value? Equal this times 0.48, so 2 million. Let me take this back to year 4. So you can see that if I discount 2 million, if I discount 4,147,000, the present value will give me what? 2 million for 4 years. So this 2 million, if I also compound from 2 million for 4 years, the future value will be what? 4,147. I hope you understand what I've done here. If you have any question, you can drop it in the comment section. So if I borrow you 2 million at the end of 2025, so I'm assuming this is at the end of 2024. I hope you understand the discounting concept, that at the end of 2024, if I borrow you money, I'm not going to include 2024 in the discounting. Okay. And this is end of 2025. So it's just 1 year. End of 2024 to end of 2025 is 1 year. But if I do beginning of 2024 to end of 2025, that will be what? 2 years. Okay. So I'm assuming end of 2024, end of 2025. So 1 year. So based on our calculation earlier on, interest on 2 million for 1 year will be 400,000, which is this 2 million times 20%. All right. So in my own eyes, I've made a gain of what? 400,000. So we assume that inflation rate is 0. So if inflation rate is 0, yes, I've made a gain of what? 400,000. So how do I look? How do I know? So let's assume that the cost of vehicle last year is 2 million, 2024, end of 2024. And at the end of 2025, the cost of vehicle remained at what? 2 million. It means that there's no inflation in the economy. Nothing is changing. So I've made a gain. But let's assume that inflation rate is not 0%. Let's assume that inflation rate is now 10%. So the cost of vehicle is 2 million in 2024, but because inflation rate is 10%, the cost of vehicle in 2025 is now 2.2 million. So if I had borrowed you 2 million and you have returned 2.4 million to me, it means that I have still made a gain of what? 200,000, because I received 2.4 million, but the value of the 2 million that I borrowed you is now 2.2 million. So it means that I still make a gain of what? 200,000. So let me go for that to assume that the inflation rate is now 20%. So if inflation rate is 20%, I borrowed you 2 million, you return 2.4 million back to me. Remember that the cost of vehicle in 2024 is 2 million. But now that you are returning, the 2 million you are returning back to me, you return 2.4 million back to me. And now the cost of vehicle is also 2.4 million. So it means that I did not make a gain and I did not make a loss, because my 2 million as at 2024 could buy what? 1 vehicle, which is this. And the 2.4 million that you return back to me in 2025 can still buy 1 vehicle. There's no gain, there's no loss. But if inflation rate goes ahead to 30%, what has happened? It means in 2024, the 2 million I borrowed you, you return 2.4 million in 2025 to me. But remember, in 2024, the 2 million I borrowed you can buy me a vehicle. But now you've returned 2.4 million to me in 2025, and that 2.4 million cannot buy me a vehicle, because now because of vehicle, because of inflation is what? 2.6. So it means that I'm making a loss. And as a result, I will not want to borrow you money. I would prefer to go and use my money to do some other things. Is that correct? So in order to ensure that both the banks and the depositor or the borrower, lender of funds to the economy, do not get to this situation, the central bank always try to put interest rates to be what? Above the inflation rates, so that lenders can get a premium for investing their money in the economy and also to attract foreign investors. And another reason why the central bank does that for bankers is that the borrowing rates also determines deposit rates. So when borrowing rate goes high, the deposit rate also goes higher. So if borrowing rate is 20% and deposit rate, for instance, is 10%, any increase to the borrowing rate will also mean increase to what? Deposit. Okay, so the central bank tries to strike a balance between these to ensure that both the lenders and the borrowers none feel what? Cheated because of what? Inflation that has eroded the value of the money over time. So if you look at this now, 2 million in 2024 can buy a car. Or 2 million in 2025, if inflation rate is 30%, cannot buy a car again because of the value of money has been eroded by what? This 30% inflation rates. So I hope you've been able to understand the concept of compounding and discounting from this video. If you do like the video, please share with your friend, comment on the comment section, and also click the like button. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please kindly subscribe to the channel so that you can get more video of this nature.